My name is Lucy Nelson. I'm 32. At 2:47 p.m. on a Tuesday afternoon in March, I was standing in my grandfather's empty house watching my mother-in-law, Vanessa Ross, carry out the last box of his precious metals collection. $195,000 worth of gold and silver coins he'd spent 40 years accumulating, while telling the estate lawyer that I'd signed away my rights to everything. I hadn't signed anything. Lucy already agreed this morning, Vanessa said, her voice crisp and certain as she adjusted her pearl necklace. She was wearing a black Chanel suit to my grandfather's house clearing. Black Chanel, to sort through a dead man's belongings. She understands that with the Medicaid recovery claim, there's really nothing left for anyone. The state takes priority. That's just how it works. The lawyer, some kid who looked about 25, nodded and made a note on his tablet. "That's not true," I said. My voice came out smaller than I wanted. "I never said that. Grandpa didn't even have Medicaid. He had private insurance through his retirement." Vanessa turned to me with that smile, the one she used at country club luncheons, all teeth, no warmth. "Sweetheart, you're confused. Your grandfather absolutely had Medicaid in his final year. I have the documentation. The state filed a claim against his estate for $167,000 in benefits. These metals are going directly to satisfy that debt." "He never had Medicaid," I repeated. My hands were shaking. "He told me specifically he didn't want government assistance. He was proud of that." "Lucy." Vanessa's voice dropped lower, taking on that patient tone she used when she wanted witnesses to think she was being reasonable. "I know you're grieving. We all are. But you can't let your emotions cloud the legal reality here. The state has first priority. That's the law." The lawyer was nodding again. He hadn't even looked up from his tablet. "Before I go on, if stories about standing up for yourself mean something to you, please hit like and subscribe and tell me in the comments where you're watching from right now and what time is it there." I watched Vanessa load that box into her Mercedes. The same coins my grandfather had shown me every birthday since I was 6 years old. American eagles, Canadian maple leafs, South African Krugerrands. He'd let me hold them, taught me about their weight and purity, told me they were real value in an uncertain world. "These will be yours someday, little architect," he'd say. He called me that because when I was 8, I'd built an elaborate house out of his coin collection cases. You've got a builder's mind. You see how things fit together. Let me take you back 15 years to the last normal Christmas we had. I was 17. Grandpa's house smelled like cinnamon and pine, and he had every single coin displayed on his dining room table under special lights he'd installed just for the occasion. He was showing my then boyfriend Michael, who would become my husband 2 years later, the collection. "This isn't just metal, son," Grandpa said, holding up a 1933 Double Eagle reproduction. "This is security. This is what I bought with every paycheck I didn't spend on fancy cars or vacations. This is what protects the people you love when the world gets uncertain." Michael's mother, Vanessa, was there too. I remember because she kept checking her watch and asking when we'd leave for real dinner at the Oak Room. She barely looked at the coins. "How quaint," she'd said. "Though I suppose if you don't trust proper financial advisors, this is one way to save." Grandpa had just smiled. "I trust preparation, Mrs. Ross. And I trust that my granddaughter will know what to do with this when I'm gone." "When you're gone," Vanessa had echoed, laughing. "You'll outlive us all, Carl. You're too stubborn to die." But he didn't outlive us all. Pancreatic cancer took him in 4 months. And exactly 11 days after his funeral, Vanessa started making her moves. It started small. She called me 3 days after we buried him. "Lucy, I've been going through some of Carl's papers. Did you know he owed back taxes? Substantial ones." "That's not possible," I'd said. "Grandpa was meticulous about taxes. He was an estate lawyer for 40 years. "Well, apparently even lawyers make mistakes. I've found documents. I'm just trying to help the family avoid any unpleasantness." I should have known then. But I was drowning in grief and working 60-hour weeks at my data entry job trying to cover the medical bills Grandpa's insurance hadn't paid. I was tired. I trusted her. 2 weeks later, she told my husband Michael that Grandpa had a secret Medicaid account. The state will want their money back, she'd said over dinner at our apartment. It's called estate recovery. Lucy needs to understand she can't just claim everything. Lucy isn't claiming anything, Michael had said, looking confused. The will was straightforward. The coin collection goes to Lucy, the house goes to Lucy, and the investment accounts are split between Lucy and her cousin David. Vanessa had set down her wine glass very carefully. Michael, honey, I need you to prepare Lucy for some difficult news. The state's claim supersedes the will. That's federal law. Those metals will need to be liquidated to pay back the Medicaid benefits. Mom, that doesn't sound right. It's right, she'd snapped. Then softer. Trust me. I've already spoken to an attorney. A real attorney, not some family friend. The state filed their claim yesterday. I'm only trying to help Lucy avoid a legal battle she can't win. You know how she gets. Emotional. Unrealistic. That phrase became her weapon. You know how Lucy gets. She said it to Michael. She said it to my cousin David. She said it to the estate lawyer, the probate clerk, and eventually to a judge who was reviewing the Medicaid claim paperwork. And because Vanessa Ross had spent 30 years building a reputation as the most reliable volunteer coordinator at Riverside Presbyterian, the most organized fundraiser for the Children's Hospital Guild, and the most trustworthy member of the Riverside Park Conservancy Board, people believed her. I didn't find out about the Medicaid claim until I received a notice from the state. It arrived on a Thursday. I remember because Thursdays were my late shift at work. I wouldn't get home until 11 p.m., and I'd stopped at the mailbox out of habit. The letter said the state had filed an estate recovery claim for $167,340 against Carl Nelson's estate for Medicaid benefits paid during his final illness. It said I had 30 days to contest with documentation proving the claim was invalid. My hands went numb holding that paper. I read it 4 times, standing in the apartment hallway. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. Someone's television was playing a game show through thin walls. Grandpa never had Medicaid. He'd told me 100 times he was using his retirement insurance. I'd seen the insurance cards. I'd called the company myself when he was first diagnosed. I called Vanessa that night at 11:32 p.m. Lucy, it's almost midnight, she answered. Did you file a fraudulent Medicaid claim against Grandpa's estate? Silence. Then, I don't appreciate your tone. Your grandfather received benefits. The state is entitled to recovery. This is standard procedure. He didn't have Medicaid. He had Blue Cross Blue Shield through his pension. You're mistaken. I have his insurance cards. Cards can be old, Lucy. He switched coverage. I'm sorry you're finding this difficult, but the documentation is clear. The metals need to be surrendered to satisfy the debt. Unless you'd like to pay $167,000 out of pocket? I don't have $167,000. You know I don't have that. Then I suggest you cooperate with the estate settlement. I'm trying to protect everyone here, Lucy. The last thing this family needs is you making this complicated. You know how you get. She hung up. I stood there in my kitchen, the one with the broken dishwasher we couldn't afford to fix, the one where we ate pasta 4 nights a week because that's what our budget allowed, and I understood that my mother-in-law was stealing everything my grandfather had left me, and she was doing it legally. The next day, I called the insurance company. They confirmed. Carl Nelson had Blue Cross Blue Shield Premier coverage through his pension from the firm where he'd worked for 42 years. Coverage that paid for everything except one experimental treatment. Total out-of-pocket $8,400. No Medicaid, never Medicaid. Can you send me documentation? I asked. Absolutely. We'll mail a letter of coverage to the address on file within 7 to 10 business days. 7 to 10 days. I had 30 days to contest the state claim, but Vanessa had already filed motions to expedite the estate settlement. The hearing was in 3 weeks. I called 5 estate attorneys. Their consultation fees alone would have cost me $2,000. None of them would take the case on contingency because Medicaid recovery claims are difficult to contest without clear evidence of fraud. I had evidence, but I didn't have money for a lawyer to present it. 2 weeks before the hearing, Vanessa showed up at our apartment. She had papers. "I've spoken to Michael," she said, sitting on our second-hand couch like she was doing us a favor by being there. "We think it's best if you sign this acknowledgement that you understand the estate is insolvent due to the state claim. It will make everything much simpler." "The estate isn't insolvent. Those metals are worth $195,000. Which will go to the state. Lucy, I know this is hard for you to accept. Your grandfather made some poor financial decisions at the end. The Medicaid was necessary. He was too proud to tell you. He didn't have Medicaid. You keep saying that." Vanessa's voice hardened. "But the state has documentation. The state doesn't make these mistakes, Lucy. You're embarrassing yourself. You're embarrassing Michael. Sign the paper." "No," she stood up. "Then you'll lose everything in court, and you'll pay legal fees on top of it. Is that what you want? To drain what little savings you and Michael have fighting a battle you cannot win? Think about your future. Think about Michael's career, his reputation." That's when I realized she wasn't just stealing the medals. She was making sure everyone would believe I was the unreasonable one for fighting back. The hearing was on April 22nd. I took a sick day from work. I brought the insurance company letter that had finally arrived. I brought Grandpa's insurance cards. I brought bank statements showing his pension payments and his premium deductions. Vanessa brought a stack of official-looking documents with state letterhead, medical records with Medicaid billing codes, payment receipts, a sworn statement from a nursing facility claiming they'd billed Medicaid for Grandpa's care. "Your Honor," her lawyer said, "the state's claim is well documented. Ms. Nelson's objection appears to stem from emotional attachment rather than legal standing." The judge looked tired. He glanced at my papers, then at Vanessa's stack. "Ms. Nelson, do you have legal representation?" "No, Your Honor. I couldn't afford—" "The state's claim appears properly filed. Unless you can provide evidence of fraud, which would require investigation beyond this court's scope, I have to honor the documented Medicaid recovery. The estate metals will be liquidated to satisfy the debt. But the insurance company confirms the insurance company's letter doesn't disprove concurrent Medicaid coverage. Motion granted." It took 12 minutes. 12 minutes to lose everything my grandfather had spent 40 years building. I sat in my car in the courthouse parking lot for an hour afterward. I didn't cry. I just sat there watching people come and go, all of them with their own legal battles, their own losses. My phone rang. "Michael." "How did it go?" "Your mother won." "Lucy." He sighed. She was trying to help. The state claim was real. She showed me all the documentation. Documentation can be forged. You think my mother forged state documents? Lucy, come on. You're upset. I get it. But you need to let this go. She stole $195,000 from me. She didn't steal anything. The state recovered their expenses. That's the law. Your mother is lying. My mother, Michael said slowly, has never lied to me in my entire life. She's on the boards of 3 charities. She's respected by everyone who knows her. And you're accusing her of fraud because you don't want to accept that Grandpa made some mistakes at the end. I love you, but you need to stop this. He hung up. That's when I cried. I had $847 in my checking account. I had student loans, credit card debt from Grandpa's funeral expenses, and half the rent on an apartment I could barely afford. I had a husband who thought I was being irrational, and a mother-in-law who'd just stolen my inheritance while making everyone believe she was helping. I had nothing. Except, I did have something. I had a data entry specialist job at Morrison Financial Services that paid $19.50 an hour. It wasn't much, but it was mine. And unlike everything else in my life, it was something Vanessa couldn't touch. So I went back to work. My manager, Patricia Chen, was the first person who actually listened. I'd been working there for 3 years, always on time, always accurate. Patricia was maybe 55. With gray hair she wore in a practical bun and reading glasses on a chain. "You look terrible," she said when I showed up for my shift the day after the hearing. "What happened?" I told her. "The whole thing. The Medicaid fraud, the hearing, the medals." Patricia was quiet for a minute. Then she said, "My mother went through something similar. Different scheme, same result. Family member forged power of attorney, cleaned out her accounts. By the time we figured it out, the money was gone, and the family member had disappeared to Florida." "What did you do?" "We couldn't do anything. She'd covered her tracks too well. But Lucy, let me tell you something. People who do this kind of thing, they always get greedy. They always make one mistake. You just have to be patient enough to catch it." "I don't have patience. I don't have money. I don't have anything." "You have timestamps." I looked up. "What?" "You're a data entry specialist. You work with timestamps every day. Every piece of work you submit has a timestamp. Every VPN login, every file save, every record you touch. That's evidence. That's proof of where you were and what you were doing at any given time." I didn't understand why that mattered then, but I would. 3 months passed. I worked. I came home. I avoided Vanessa. Michael and I barely spoke about anything that mattered. Then on a Saturday in July, Vanessa called Michael and told him we needed to come to lunch at her club. "I have some exciting news to share." We went. The Riverside Club. White tablecloths, orchid centerpieces, waiters who called Vanessa Mrs. Ross, with obvious respect. She was already seated when we arrived, at her usual table by the window overlooking the golf course. She was wearing cream-colored silk and those same pearls. "Michael, Lucy, sit, sit. I've ordered the salmon for everyone. It's spectacular here." We sat. "I wanted you both to know first," Vanessa said, smiling. "I've made a rather significant donation to the Children's Hospital in your grandfather's name, Lucy. $50,000. They're going to name a wing after him. The Carl Nelson Pediatric Recovery Wing. Isn't that wonderful?" The room tilted. $50,000? Yes, I thought it was the perfect way to honor his memory. He would have loved knowing his legacy was helping children. "Where did you get $50,000? Vanessa's smile didn't waver. "I've been fortunate in my investments, and I thought, after everything with the estate being so difficult, this would be a nice gesture, a way to turn something sad into something beautiful." She'd stolen $195,000 worth of medals. The state claim was for $167,000. That left $28,000 unaccounted for even if her story was true. And now she'd donated $50,000 from investments. The math didn't work. "That's very generous, Mom," Michael said. He was beaming. "Dad would be proud." I excused myself to the bathroom. I stood at the sink with my hands braced on the marble counter, looking at my reflection. My face was pale. There were dark circles under my eyes from working double shifts to save money for a lawyer I still couldn't afford. And Vanessa Ross was out there being celebrated for her generosity with my grandfather's stolen medals. When I came back to the table, she was showing Michael a mock-up of the plaque that would go on the hospital wing. The Carl Nelson Pediatric Recovery Wing, a gift from the Ross Family Foundation. Not from his granddaughter, not from his estate, from her. She'd stolen his money and his legacy. "Lucy, you've barely touched your salmon," Vanessa said. "Is everything all right? You look upset. Michael, is she still dwelling on the estate situation?" "She's fine, Mom. Because holding on to resentment isn't healthy. Your grandfather wouldn't want you to be bitter. He'd want you to move forward, to be grateful for what you have." She reached across the table and patted my hand, the same hand that had signed documents claiming state Medicaid recovery. "Family is everything, Lucy. That's what matters. Not money, not things. Family." I pulled my hand back. Something hardened in me right then. Something shifted and locked into place. "You're absolutely right," I said. "Family is everything." Vanessa smiled. She thought she'd won. She had no idea that my grandfather, the estate lawyer who'd spent 40 years protecting families from exactly this kind of predator, had been planning for this exact moment since before I was born. 2 weeks later, I got a call at work from a law office I didn't recognize. Whitmore and Associates. The receptionist asked if I could come in for a meeting regarding Carl Nelson's estate. The estate is closed, I said. Not entirely, Miss Nelson. There are some documents Mr. Nelson left with us that have a time release clause. The clause has been triggered. Can you come in tomorrow at 4 p.m.? I took another sick day. Patricia covered for me. Go, she said, and take notes on every single thing they say. The law office was in an old building downtown, the kind with dark wood paneling and brass fixtures. The lawyer, James Whitmore, was maybe 70, with white hair and sharp blue eyes. Ms. Nelson, please sit. Your grandfather was a colleague of mine for many years, a brilliant estate attorney. Meticulous. I know. He came to see me 8 years ago. He said he needed to create a secondary trust, something separate from his main estate. Something that couldn't be touched by anyone except you, and only under very specific circumstances. My heart was pounding. What circumstances? If anyone attempted to file a fraudulent claim against his estate within 1 year of his death, this trust would activate. He was very specific about the triggers. He knew someone would try. He knew. He knew exactly who would try and exactly how they'd do it. Your grandfather didn't trust your husband's family, Ms. Nelson. He especially didn't trust your mother-in-law. Whitmore opened a file. He's been tracking her for years, ever since your wedding. He slid a folder across the desk. Inside were documents I didn't understand at first. Bank transfers, property records, affidavits. What am I looking at? Evidence that Vanessa Ross has been running this same scheme for 15 years. Your grandfather's estate was her fourth target. She identifies families with assets and no legal representation, files fraudulent Medicaid claims through shell companies she controls, and liquidates estates before anyone can properly contest. She's stolen an estimated $1.8 million from 7 different families. I couldn't breathe. The nursing facility that claimed they billed Medicaid for your grandfather's care doesn't exist. The medical records? Forged. The state claim itself was filed through a processor she controls. She's been exploiting a loophole in the Medicaid estate recovery system for over a decade. Why didn't Grandpa stop her? Because he needed her to complete the crime. He needed her to actually steal the assets so there would be evidence. He spent the last 8 years of his life documenting everything, every move she made, every fake company, every forged document. He was building a case. Whitmore pulled out a sealed envelope. It had my name on it in Grandpa's handwriting. He asked me to give this to you when the time was right. He said you'd know what to do. My hands shook as I opened it. The letter was 2 pages, typed on his old typewriter. I could picture him sitting at his desk, hunting and pecking at the keys like he always did. Dear Lucy, my little architect, if you're reading this, then I'm gone, and Vanessa Ross is already doing exactly what I knew she would do. I'm sorry I couldn't stop this while I was alive. I tried to warn you, but I also knew you needed to see it for yourself. You needed to understand what she was capable of. Do you remember when you were 8 and you built that house out of my coin cases? You arranged them so carefully, creating rooms and hallways, a whole world from pieces that weren't meant to fit together. I told you then that you had a builder's mind. You see how things connect. The original trust documents are with James Whitmore at Whitmore and Associates. His office is at 847 Riverside Avenue, Suite 302. The copy I've left you is incomplete on purpose. Not enough to prove anything on its own, but enough for you to know I'm telling the truth. Inside this envelope, you'll find the original deed to the metals collection, in trust for you since you were 6 years old, bank statements showing Vanessa's shell company accounts, signed affidavits from 3 other families she's defrauded, My own sworn statement documenting her pattern of behavior, a cashier's check for $75,000 from a completely separate account she doesn't know exists. Don't show this to anyone yet. Not Michael, not even Patricia Chen, though she sounds like a good person from what you've told me about her in our phone calls. Wait for the right moment. Vanessa will make another move. She always does. She'll get greedy or careless or both. When she does, you'll have everything you need. James knows what to do. Trust him. Trust yourself. You are not the emotional, unrealistic girl she makes you out to be. You are brilliant and strong and worthy of everything good in this world. You are my architect. You always have been. All my love. Your Grandpa Carl. Always building toward truth. I read it 3 times. Then I looked at James Whitmore. When did he write this? December 2019, 4 months before his diagnosis. He updated it twice after that, most recently 2 weeks before he died. He was very clear about the timeline. He knew she'd move fast after his death. What do I do now? Now, you wait. Vanessa is planning something. Your grandfather predicted she'd make a public play within 6 months of stealing the medals, something that would cement her reputation while covering the theft. He thought it might be a charitable donation. She donated $50,000 to Children's Hospital in his name. Whitmore smiled. It wasn't a kind smile. It was the smile of a lawyer who'd just heard his case get stronger. Perfect. That's traceable. That's proof. Did she announce it publicly? She's having it announced at the annual Ross Family Foundation picnic next month. It's in Riverside Park. The whole extended family comes, about 40 people. Then that's where we'll do this. Do what? Expose her. In front of everyone who thinks she's a saint. In front of everyone who didn't believe you. Your grandfather wrote very specific instructions for how this should end, Ms. Nelson. He wanted you to have the satisfaction of watching her destroy herself. I sat there in that wood-paneled office with my grandfather's letter in my hands and $75,000 in cashier's check form in an envelope and evidence of systematic fraud in a folder, and I finally understood. Grandpa hadn't left me defenseless. He'd left me armed. The next 4 weeks were the longest of my life. I went to work every day. I smiled at Vanessa when she called to remind us about the picnic. I acted normal. But every night, I studied the documents James Whitmore had given me. I memorized names, dates, dollar amounts. I traced Vanessa's shell companies through 3 states. I found the fake nursing facility's address, a P.O. box in Delaware. I found the medical records she'd forged, signed by a doctor who'd had his license revoked 6 years ago. Patricia noticed I was different. You found something, she said. I found everything. Good. Make her pay for it. The day of the picnic was perfect. Clear blue sky, temperature at 76 degrees, light breeze. The Ross family had reserved the entire west meadow of Riverside Park, the nice part with the gazebo and the pond. Vanessa had it catered. White tents, string lights even though it was 2 p.m., waiters in bow ties serving past hors d'oeuvres, a banner that said Ross Family Foundation Annual Gathering. There were maybe 45 people there. Michael's father and his brothers and their families. Vanessa's sister. Cousins I'd met twice. The hospital's director of development. A photographer from the local paper. Vanessa was wearing white linen and those pearls. She looked radiant. She looked like someone who'd just made a $50,000 donation to children's health care. She looked like someone who'd never stolen anything in her life. Michael and I arrived at 2:15 p.m. Vanessa waved us over immediately. Lucy! Michael! Come meet Dr. Harrison from Children's Hospital. He's going to say a few words about the Carl Nelson wing. Dr. Harrison shook my hand. He was genuinely kind. Your grandfather must have been an incredible man to inspire such generosity. Mrs. Ross has told me so much about his dedication to family. He was dedicated to truth, I said. Vanessa's smile tightened just slightly. Lucy's still grieving. It's been difficult for her. Of course, losing a grandparent is never easy. At 2:30, Vanessa called for everyone's attention. We all gathered near the gazebo. She stood on the steps so everyone could see her. Thank you all for coming. As you know, our family has always believed in giving back to the community. Today, I'm honored to announce a gift that's particularly close to my heart. A $50,000 donation to Children's Hospital in memory of Carl Nelson, a man who taught us all the importance of family and legacy. Everyone applauded. Michael was beaming. The hospital will be naming their new pediatric recovery wing after him. I can't think of a better way to honor his memory than helping children heal. More applause. Dr. Harrison stepped forward to say a few words about the hospital's mission. I caught James Whitmore's eye. He was standing near the back of the crowd, exactly where I'd asked him to be. He nodded. This was it. When Dr. Harrison finished speaking, I raised my hand. Can I say something? Vanessa's face went momentarily blank with surprise, then recovered. Of course, Lucy. I'm sure everyone would love to hear from Carl's granddaughter. I walked to the gazebo steps. 45 faces looked up at me. Michael looked confused. Vanessa looked confident. She had no idea. Thank you, Vanessa, for this beautiful event, and thank you, Dr. Harrison, for the work you do at Children's Hospital. I know my grandfather would have loved supporting pediatric care. I paused. But he would have wanted that support to come from his actual assets, not from money that was stolen from his estate through fraud. Dead silence. Vanessa's smile stayed fixed. Lucy, this isn't the time. On April 22nd of this year, a Medicaid estate recovery claim was filed against my grandfather's estate for $167,340. That claim stated that he'd received Medicaid benefits during his final illness. That claim was the basis for liquidating his precious metals collection, valued at $195,000. Lucy, everyone here knows about the estate situation, Vanessa said. Her voice was calm, but her eyes were hard. You're embarrassing yourself. My grandfather never had Medicaid. He had Blue Cross Blue Shield Premier coverage through his pension. I have the insurance company's documentation confirming this. I also have documentation showing that the nursing facility that supposedly billed Medicaid for his care doesn't exist. The address on their letterhead is a P.O. box in Delaware. The medical records submitted with the claim were signed by Dr. Richard Ashford, whose medical license was revoked in 2018. People were starting to murmur. Dr. Harrison looked confused. Michael looked pale. Vanessa's face was changing. The color was draining out slowly, like watching a photograph fade. You don't know what you're talking about, she said, but her voice wavered. I also have documentation showing that this isn't the first time you've done this. My grandfather spent 8 years investigating you. He documented 3 other families you defrauded using the exact same Medicaid recovery scheme. The Hutchinson estate in 2016, the Martinez estate in 2018, the Chen estate in 2020. Total stolen, approximately $1.8 million. This is absurd, Vanessa said, but she was backing up slightly. You're making wild accusations based on grief, and I have bank records showing shell company accounts in your name. I have affidavits from the other families. I have my grandfather's own sworn statement written before his death, predicting exactly what you do and exactly how you do it. James Whitmore stepped forward from the crowd. Mrs. Ross, I'm James Whitmore. I was Carl Nelson's attorney and colleague for 42 years. Everything Ms. Nelson is saying is documented and verified. Mr. Nelson left a complete file with my office, including evidence that you filed the fraudulent Medicaid claim through a processing company you control. The state investigation was opened yesterday. Vanessa's hand went to her pearls. She was clutching them like a lifeline. The $50,000 you donated to Children's Hospital, I continued, came from the liquidation of metals you stole. My grandfather's collection was worth $195,000. The fake claim was for $167,000. That left $28,000. Plus the return on investment you made by holding those metals for 3 months before liquidating. The math works out almost perfectly. You ungrateful, Vanessa started, then stopped. She looked around at all the faces staring at her. Michael's father, her sister, the hospital director, the photographer from the newspaper. The state filed that claim, not me. I was just trying to help settle the estate. Lucy, you've always had a problem with me ever since you married Michael. You've always thought you were better than our family. I have my work logs, I said calmly. I'm a data entry specialist. Every piece of work I submit has a timestamp, a VPN login record, a manager witness. On March 8th, the day you claimed I signed acknowledgement of the state claim, I was logged into my work system from 8:47 a.m. to 6:23 p.m. I have submission timestamps for 847 records processed that day. My manager, Patricia Chen, can verify I never left the building. I couldn't have signed anything at your lawyer's office at 10 a.m. because I was at my desk entering healthcare billing records. Vanessa opened her mouth. Nothing came out. I'm not here for revenge, I said. I'm here for truth. My grandfather knew this day would come. He prepared for it. These documents speak for themselves. I held up the folder. Everything's here. The original trust showing the metals were mine since I was 6 years old. The insurance documentation, the shell company accounts, the affidavits from your other victims, my grandfather's statement. If anyone wants to see them, they're public record as of this morning. Michael's father, Robert Ross, stepped forward. His face was gray. Vanessa, tell me this isn't true. Vanessa looked at him, then at Michael, then at me. She was always going to take everything, Vanessa said quietly. Carl loved her more than any of us. His precious Lucy, his little architect. He would have given her everything and left the rest of the family with nothing. I was protecting us. I was protecting our name, our legacy. There it was, the confession. Not because I'd trapped her, but because she couldn't help herself. Because in her mind, she'd done the right thing. You stole from 7 families, I said. You stole $1.8 million. You exploited a government program meant to help the poor. You forged medical records and state documents. That's not protecting anyone. That's theft. I built this family's reputation, Vanessa said. Her voice was rising now, getting shrill. I've spent 30 years making the Ross name mean something in this community. I've raised money for hospitals and libraries and parks. I've volunteered thousands of hours. And you think you can destroy that because your grandfather left you some coins? He left me those coins when I was 6 years old, I said. They were never part of his estate to distribute. They were already mine. You just stole them. Dr. Harrison was backing away slowly. The newspaper photographer had his camera out but wasn't taking pictures. He looked too shocked. Michael was standing absolutely still, staring at his mother like he'd never seen her before. Michael, Vanessa said, turning to him, you know me. You know I would never— You told me Lucy signed the acknowledgement, Michael said slowly. You showed me a document with her signature. That was— You forged her signature too, he said. It wasn't a question. Vanessa didn't answer. She just stood there clutching her pearls, her white linen outfit perfect in the afternoon sun, surrounded by people who were seeing her for the first time. James Whitmore cleared his throat. Mrs. Ross, you should probably contact an attorney. The state fraud investigation will likely result in charges. The families you've defrauded are considering a civil suit, and the IRS will want to examine whether you paid taxes on the money you stole. Vanessa looked at me one last time. You've destroyed this family. No, I said. You did that. I just told the truth. I walked away. I didn't wait for her response. I didn't wait for apologies or explanations. I just walked across the grass, past the white tents and the string lights and the banner celebrating the Ross Family Foundation. James Whitmore walked with me. Your grandfather would be proud. He knew, I said. He knew she'd do exactly this. He knew people. That was his gift. And he knew you'd be strong enough to face her when the time came. Behind us, I could hear Vanessa crying. I could hear Michael's father asking questions in a low, angry voice. I could hear the party dissolving into shocked conversations. I didn't look back. 3 months later, Vanessa Ross was charged with wire fraud, forgery, and exploiting a government program. The state investigation uncovered 5 additional families she'd defrauded beyond the ones Grandpa had found. Total theft, $2.3 million over 17 years. She pleaded guilty. 2 years in federal prison, 5 years probation, and full restitution to all victims. Michael and I separated 2 weeks after the picnic. He couldn't reconcile what his mother had done with the person he'd thought she was. And he couldn't forgive me for exposing her publicly. "You could have handled this privately," he said when he packed his things. "She stole from 7 families," I said. "She would have kept stealing. Sometimes the truth has to be public." He left. I didn't try to stop him. I used Grandpa's $75,000 to pay off my student loans and put a down payment on a small house in a neighborhood where I could walk to work. It's nothing fancy. 2 bedrooms, a garden I'm learning to maintain, a porch where I can sit and watch the seasons change. Patricia got promoted to regional manager and offered me a senior data specialist position. I took it. I still work with timestamps and VPN logs and submission records. But now I also train new employees. I tell them that details matter, that documentation matters, that sometimes a timestamp can save your life. I visit Grandpa's grave every few months. There's a bench nearby where I sit and tell him about my life, about the house, about Patricia, about the garden I planted with vegetables I'm learning not to kill. "I'm building something," I tell him. "You'd be proud." The wind rustles the trees. If I close my eyes, I can almost hear him calling me his little architect. 1 year after the picnic, I went back to Riverside Park. Same meadow. No party this time, just me and a blanket and a book. I sat there for an hour, reading and watching families play. Kids running through the grass, parents pushing swings, dogs chasing tennis balls. A woman about my age sat down on the bench nearby. She had a toddler with her, maybe 2 years old. The kid dropped his juice box and started crying. "Hey, it's okay," the woman said, picking it up. "It's not broken. See? Still good." The kid took the juice box, examined it carefully, then smiled. I thought about Grandpa then, about how he'd spent 8 years building a case to protect me. How he'd known exactly what Vanessa would do and planned for every possibility. How he'd trusted me to be strong enough to use the tools he left me. Some things break when they're dropped, but some things don't. Some things are built strong enough to survive the fall. If you're watching this and someone in your family has ever made you doubt yourself, made you think you were too emotional or too sensitive or too difficult, I want you to know something. Your version of the truth matters. Your documentation matters. Your timestamps and your receipts and your witness statements all matter. People who gaslight you count on you not keeping records. They count on you doubting your own memory. They count on you being too tired or too poor or too scared to fight back. Keep the records. Document everything. Trust yourself. And if you've ever had to choose between keeping the peace and telling the truth, type "I chose truth" in the comments. Or if you're still deciding, type "I'm gathering evidence." Both are valid. Both are brave. If this story meant something to you, check the description for more stories just like this one. Thank you for being here. And remember, you don't need anyone's permission to protect what's yours.